everybody. Welcome to the Dark Roast Cult podcast, where we drink coffee and talk about death and other fun stuff like that. Right off the bat, I'd like to issue an apology. I'd like to start the podcast with an apology right here, right now. The chair that I'm currently sitting in is, it's actually a torture device from the mid-1800s, featuring a lot of rusty hinges and squeaky wooden spikes, a couple metal bars that don't quite fit together very well, so you might hear a couple rogue sounds. That's what you're hearing, I swear. Or it could be the three cats that are running around the studio? The lair. They're running around the lair. I would call it a lair because I lay right there on the floor a lot. Right about now, I'm sure you're probably asking yourself, what have you gotten yourself into? What did you just click on? What is this? This is the Dark Roast Cult podcast, and we'll be talking about all kinds of creepy things. What makes you feel the willies? Wait, I don't want to word it like that, actually. That, first of all, feels inappropriate. Well, we're gonna talk about the stuff that keeps you up at night, the things that give you the shivers, and whatever it is that chases you up the stairs in the dark. Not to mention the sweet, sweet, hot brown bean water that we all know and love. If you're on any sort of social media, we're already there, ready for you to join us. You can hit the follow button. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, just Dark Roast Cult. You'll find us there. Every episode of the podcast is going to have a companion post featuring any sort of pictures or images or anything that you might need context for that we talk about in this podcast. You could go take a look right on Instagram, follow along at home. I had a couple news posts that I wanted to talk about before we got into the meat of the podcast, but I read something online today when I opened up Twitter that was pretty noteworthy. I figured we'll just talk about that instead. So we're going to go ahead and skip over the satanic church in Florida that is worshiping Beyonce, and we'll just skip right over the Pennsylvania man who beat his 92-year-old father to death with a table leg because he thought he was a vampire. And let's talk about Galene Maxwell, as she was just recently arrested by the FBI. I saw pictures on Twitter posted by user Druliana. These images feature, I guess, what are the last images of JonBenet Ramsey before she was, if you didn't already know, kidnapped and murdered, apparently. There's a Netflix documentary you can watch. I don't want to sit here and true crime podcast you into a whole story, but it's worth a watch. It's very interesting, but the picture is of this child who was a beauty pageant star, I guess you call them, and behind her is more what we're interested in, because behind her is the profile of a woman who at the time probably didn't seem very familiar, but now if you've got Netflix, you probably recognize her, or at least understand that it looks a lot like Galene Maxwell, BFF of Jeffrey Epstein, the great big dirty pedophile who went to jail and then, got Epsteined, maybe not, we don't know. But you could see her behind JonBenet Ramsey in that photo, which they're trying to connect these whole things together. And then along comes is it Madeleine McCann, I believe is her name. It's another documentary on Netflix, I think, another child who went missing. I guess there is a suspect drawing in that case that looks a lot like Galene Maxwell, and they're trying to connect all this together. I guess maybe I just keep talking. I've got an email, darkroastcultpodcast@gmail.com. Go ahead, email me your thoughts on anything we talk about. And more importantly, if you know more than I do about things and I say something that doesn't quite sound right to you, go ahead, fire me an email. We'll do a little corrections and maybe I'll at least learn a little something. But I was reading through the posts and I saw a lot of people were trying to connect all this together because apparently they all know the same lawyer, used the same lawyer, or were dating the lawyer at the time. It all kind of revolves around this lawyer. And I didn't read too much into it other than that because I find like a lot of information on the internet can't always be trusted, so I try not to read deep facts and get too involved in it, but I try and get like just the gist, just so I can understand it when people bring it up in conversation. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. It's terrible stuff, of course. I didn't realize that today was the day they were redirecting the highway in front of my house. I was hoping we were going to have a nice quiet recording today. But no, I guess you're going to be listening to the Indy 500 go by. How about them Mayans doomsday calendar, Mayan doomsday calendar predictions, huh? I read an article while I was doing research for this podcast like 2 or 3 weeks ago that the world was actually going to end about 1 to 2 weeks ago, I guess, at this point. They went ahead and, what is this? Oh, where am I? Okay, sorry, a spider just came down in front of me. How ballsy of that spider, to come down right in front of me like that and look me in the eye and say, oh, hey, I'm right here, what you gonna do? But the fact that it got away from me right now, that's what's unsettling. All over the place, demons. So a couple of weeks ago, I read an article that they had translated the Mayan calendar into a different type of calendar format. Who knows why? I guess one doomsday wasn't enough for them. They had to have a second one. And apparently the Mayans didn't account for, I don't know, leap years or long weekends or something. So they translated it to this different calendar. And it predicted actually that the world was supposed to end 2 to 3 weeks ago. I'm looking around now. I'm still here. I don't know about you. Hopefully you're not listening to this from beyond the grave, and if you are, what's up? As long as your world's not on fire, mine's fine too. I think we're okay. This is the second time that the Mayan calendar has predicted the end of the world and nothing's happened. I'm starting to think the Mayan calendar might not be the most reliable thing to set our watches to. So if you've got your watch set to the Mayan calendar, it's time to get into the year 2020 where our clocks are pretty much set by our phones because they're connected to the internet. It hasn't told me the world is going to end yet, so I've got no reason to be paranoid. Which, by the way, if the world's going to end, don't tell me. I don't want to know. I want to be taken by surprise. I think that's a way better way to live. If the world's going to end, I don't need to know, because then I'm just going to be worried about, like, oh, what's my last word going to be? Like Friday on noon, it's coming. I gotta get a good word in before everything is incinerated. So, I'd rather just be like, on the toilet, and then all of a sudden I'm bones. I don't know how it works. I just don't want to be expecting it. So, take me while I'm on the toilet. So, sticking with the theme of the program, let's talk about what's creepy. I thought for the first episode of the podcast, we'd talk about what at least I find to be the most creepiest thing on the planet. Thought we'd dive deep into the creepiest thing I can think of. The ocean. The ocean is like a big old tarp covering something in your neighbor's backyard that you just want to look at, but for all kinds of reasons you can't. I used to say that the bottom of the ocean is where God hides all of his mistakes, and I still do. I think we all know about how gross sea life is down at the bottom of the ocean, and, I mean, we could say whatever we want about them. There's nothing they can really do about it. The thing is, I'm not here to talk about all of the disgusting sea life at the bottom of the ocean. However, I would like to mention that not only is a lot of the sea life on the bottom of the ocean floor disgusting, sometimes it's real big and disgusting. There's something about the conditions living on the bottom of the ocean that cause some invertebrate species to suffer from something called deep sea giganticism. Cold water temperatures, the lack of things hunting them, and food scarcity are all things that are linked to deep sea giganticism. Because underwater habitats are so hard to get to, they're really hard to research as well, if you didn't know. Not a whole lot is known on the subject, but some of the animals that have been found with deep sea giganticism include 30-foot squid, big old jellyfish, a 12-foot Japanese spider crab, the isopods, which are like deep sea potato bugs, so they sometimes grow to be 2 feet in length, 3-meter long deep water stingray, and giant sea spiders. Imagine how big a giant sea spider is if they're already describing it as giant, and now it's got deep sea giganticism? Look, if the bottom of the ocean doesn't creep you out already, let me share some facts with you. When it comes to deep sea exploration, we've explored about a total of 6% of the ocean floor, and only 1% of the ocean itself. The average depth of the ocean is about 12,400 feet, and light can only penetrate 330 feet of it. That means that most of our planet's surface is in constant darkness. The longest mountain range on the planet is about 23,000 miles long and lies below the surface of the ocean. It cuts down the center of the Atlantic Ocean, and it's called the Mid-Ocean Ridge. How clever. It takes up 23% of the Earth's total surface and has peaks higher than those of the Alps. And it's just down there, hiding at the bottom of the ocean like it's no big deal. With knowing that, you can probably understand how there's all kinds of stuff to be found underwater, and they're still finding new stuff all the time. So I've put together a little list of things that they've found at the bottom of the ocean that just make me want to go, ugh. In 2011, Swedish treasure hunters were taking sonar images of the bottom of the northern Baltic Sea. Sonar images are sound waves hitting the bottom of the floor of the ocean and then bouncing back up to the boat, and then a machine basically translates it into a picture. So one of these sound waves pinged back an image of an object that seemed pretty unnatural. They called it the Baltic Sea Anomaly. The sonar image, which can be seen by going to our Instagram, instagram.com/darkroastcult, shows what appears to be an object at the bottom of the Baltic Sea that looks a lot like the Millennium Falcon, which is how people are interpreting it to be. Some sort of UFO or USO, if you're a nerd, some sort of alien object at the bottom of the ocean. A lot of people are claiming that you could also see sort of a runway in front of it, which looks like more like an impact mark to me, sort of dragging along the seafloor. When the team tried to get a closer look at the object, their sonar equipment malfunctioned, as all good sonar equipment does. The idea of it being alien technology buried at the bottom of the sea floor is pretty popular, but scientists, who are famous for not wanting to have any fun, have analyzed the images, and they've concluded that it's a glacial deposit. You know, because they don't like having fun. In a 2019 interview, it was said that there may be a possibility of a new expedition via a television production to go down and finally settle once and for all what is hiding at the bottom of the Baltic Sea. Some sort of anomaly, obviously. In Japan, back in 1986, a tour dive operator was looking for a good place to observe hammerhead sharks when they noticed something that resembled architectural structures. The ancient structure, now known as the, and I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, Yanaguni Complex, has sparked a heated debate among scientists. It was first estimated to be about 10,000 years old, dating it back to a time when it would have been on dry land above water, and possibly the remains of a mythical lost continent of Mu. It's now said that it's only 2,000 to 3,000 years old, which would mean sea levels were about close to what they are now. It suggested that after construction, tectonic activity, earthquakes and all that, submerged the structures below the water. Some say looking at it they can identify pyramids, castles, roads, and monuments. Others say it's just shattered rock. The literal translation for the name of the monument is Yanaguni Island Submarine Topography, sitting 26 meters below the surface, 50 meters long, 20 meters wide. This one's a little hard to picture. If I'm honestly describing what I see when I look up images of it, it just looks like a lot of rocks that have been either broken off or carved away at right angles, sort of haphazardly with no real purpose. I'll post a couple images on the Instagram for you. The 3D renderings that are supposed to show sort of the monument in its entirety look a lot like just sort of big clumps of rock. But when you look at it up close, it does sort of look like it could be sort of steps to some sort of ancient pyramid or something along those lines. But from far away, it just looks like rocks. I don't know. I just want to give a quick shout out to all the cities that I had to read about while I was doing research for this podcast that were once on land and now are at the bottom of the ocean because of soil liquefaction. I know that it's fun to read about how God might have said, hey, you know what? See that city there? no more city there. And then just water. Soil liquefaction is a very real and kind of boring thing when it comes down to it. The water penetrates the soil, it becomes very mushy, things collapse when there's, tectonic activity, which sends a lot of cities to the bottom of the ocean. One day you wake up, you look out your window, your neighbor's no longer there, and all of a sudden, you got this wicked oceanfront property because your neighbor's house collapsed and is now at the bottom of the ocean, which is kind of fine because your neighbor can be a bit of a dick sometimes. No neighbor, oceanfront property, thanks soil liquefaction. What if I told you there was a Stonehenge at the bottom of Lake Michigan? This one I couldn't find a Wikipedia article for, but I found a whole lot of stuff on other websites that was just saying that it was just a bunch of bad photos of neat rocks, but that's not the world I live in. The one I live in, every rock photo is a good rock photo. Let's take a trip back to 2007. 12 meters below the surface of Lake Michigan, a professor of underwater archaeology found a strange arrangement of stones believed to be over 10,000 years old, while on the hunt for shipwrecks or whatever it is you look for down there. The stones are measured to be all the same distance apart, and when a diving team tried to explore the area, they found a rock with a carving of what appears to be a mastodon. Again, this is about all the information I could find on the subject, so is this all just bad photos of neat rocks? There's no way to know until somebody does a little more research than I bother to do. August 22nd, 1954. A bronze statue is placed at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. It's 2.5 meters tall and depicts Jesus with his head and hands raised skyward. Or a dead body the mafia gave cement boots to and chucked over a bridge. Jeezy Christo snitches with the fishes tonight. If you know what I mean. Just when one random Jesus Christ statue wasn't creepy enough, a second statue cast from the same mold was gifted to the Navy of, and I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, Genoa, in 1961 for the assistance of rescuing the crew of the Italian vessel Bianca C. It now sits off the coast of St. George in Grenada. Imagine being someone scuba diving in the Mediterranean Sea. When you bump into this random Jesus, you get so spooked you move to Grenada, where you think you're far from that terror of the deep, only to be diving in the second Jesus' territory. Wrong neighborhood! So you travel to Chicago, where you think it's safe to stay at the Palmer House Hotel. You visit the Underwater Society of America. They're having their 1962 convention, and that's where you bump into Jesus Christ number 3. Cast from the same mold again. In 1962, it was shipped to Chicago by boat and presented to the Underwater Society of America. So logically, you move to Florida, where you'll never run into that Jesus statue because, let's face it, Florida's the last place he's gonna go. Guess what? You're dead wrong. August 25th, 1965, statue number 3 was submerged 6 miles off the coast of Key Largo in Florida, near some dry rocks if you're looking. And this is where our story ends, because you're already in Florida, and this is where a lot of things come to die. Guys, I gotta tell you about this mound. In 2003, Sonar Survey located a cone-like structure made of stone that was bigger than a 747 jet in the Sea of Galilee in Israel. The structure is made up of 60,000 tons of basalt boulders, 1 to 2 meters in size, and cobbles, which I'm guessing are just rocks that are smaller than boulders but bigger than pebbles. The nearest outcrop of basalt rock is hundreds of meters from the site, and it's guessed that an average stone in the structure weighed about 200 pounds. How did it get there? Who put it there? Why was it there? I have no idea. I'm asking. Archaeologists estimate that the structure is anywhere from 2,000 to 12,000 years old, which is not a lot of help. Thanks, archaeologists. It could have been built on land and later swallowed by the sea, depending on how old it actually is, but no one knows what its actual purpose was or how long ago it was used. What a mystery. And the last thing on my list of disturbing oceanic discoveries was discovered in 1872 using sounding equipment which was just TNT thrown over the side of their boat. In the western Pacific Ocean, between Japan and Papua New Guinea, is a crescent-shaped hole in the seafloor that is 69 kilometers wide and 2,500 kilometers long. and it's known as the Mariana Trench. It's the deepest part of the ocean, and at its deepest, it's 11,000 meters deep. If Mount Everest was placed in there, it would still have 2 kilometers of water covering the peak. Because pressure down there is more than 1,000 times the pressure at sea level, there have only been a small handful of people who have actually seen the bottom firsthand, one of them being James Cameron. You know, from the Titanic. More people have been to the moon than the bottom of the trench, which I'm sure they're happy about because the floor of the trench is covered in a thick yellow ooze, created by animals dying from the extreme water pressure and settling to the bottom where pressures continue to squeeze their decaying tissues until it forms the thick yellow ooze. That's something I think I'd like to know about before I go anywhere. If, where I'm going, everything is covered in dead fish that have been squeezed into an ooze, I think before you tell me we're going there, tell me about that first, because that's something I think that would be a deciding factor in whether or not I go there and spend my time. Other than this disgusting slime on the bottom of the Mariana Trench, they've also discovered gigantic single-cell amoebas 10 centimeters in length, which probably goes along with the deep-sea giganticism we discussed earlier, a plastic bag, and candy wrappers, which is probably the most disturbing thing, I think, on this entire list. The bottom of the Mariana Trench is so far away from people, and yet we still manage to somehow mess it up. 100% of the sea life sampled from the bottom of the trench had plastic in their digestive tracts, as well as carbon-14 from nuclear bomb testings. Speaking of trenches littered with junk, special shout out to the Tonga Trench, where the radioisotope thermoelectric generator from the Apollo 13 mission was supposed to have landed after being jettisoned over the southwest Pacific Ocean, where it'll remain radioactive for thousands of years. That's nuts. I guess at this point of the list, I'd like to give a couple special shout-outs to some mysterious things that probably don't exist, but I unfortunately read about while doing research for the podcast. I say unfortunately because I couldn't find a whole lot of information on these couple things, so I just have a little bit of information about something that is most likely fake. In 2014, a group of divers swimming off the coast of the Bahamas looking for shipwrecks discovered a limestone sphinx that was thought to come from Wadi Ranuhu in Egypt. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but no one is certain how it got there. That is literally all the information I could find, and you would think that a sphinx found in a spot where sphinxes should not be found, made of things that sphinxes are supposed to be made out of, you think that would get a lot more attention. If I had a theory, I did see a photo of a sphinx underwater. I don't know if it's this sphinx or not. It was a smaller sphinx. It could have been brought on a ship, maybe stolen by pirates, and the ship may be sunk because of a great big limestone sphinx riding the boat, and that could be it. Or it could just be a great big lie. It's hard to say. And of course, lastly, and most certainly leastly, because I don't know about this at all, reports in 2012 suggest that a scientist discovered a crystal pyramid at the bottom of the Bermuda Triangle. It's supposedly 3 times the size of the Great Pyramid of Giza. It is believed if the pyramid is real that it could be the cause of all of the mysterious happenings amongst things in the Bermuda Triangle, and also the fact that, it's made of crystal apparently implies that it generates some sort of cosmic power, which I don't really know if I believe that about crystals. That's just me. You could be listening to this and be covered in crystals. I'm not going to judge you, but I'm certainly not going to buy a crystal. Anyway, cosmic power, and if the pyramid is truly made of crystal, it would be enough crystal to supply every flea market in America with 3 tables of rocks for at least a raccoon's lifetime. I just made that little last fact up. Over all of the articles I read about all of this pyramid stuff, there were a couple different doctors and scientists who were supposed to have discovered this pyramid, but according to Snopes, Dr. Ray Brown claimed that he came upon such a structure while scuba diving in the Bahamas. There is an old documentary from 1980 called In Search Of, where he talks about how he stumbled upon the pyramid and all of that stuff. Whether or not that's true, some further investigation on my part could have been well fit right here, but I looked and I couldn't find a whole lot of reliable information, other than an episode of Ancient Aliens that I am slowly starting to remember. So that concludes my list of things that have been found at the bottom of the ocean that just make me go, ugh. You know, and if there's anything you think that I've missed on my list and you think I should add to it, send me an email, and that email is darkroastcultpodcast@gmail.com. Send me an email, and maybe we'll do a revision of the list, if you can plead your case. And if you take anything away from this episode of the podcast, let it be giant sea spiders. Gigantic sea spiders that are already big in nature, but made bigger by the environment that they are in. Deep sea giganticism is real, and these spiders are just walking around down there like nothing's wrong with being a great big spider. Have fun with that. So, do I have a bit of a story for you? By the way, thanks for tuning into the podcast, sticking around so far. Just a couple things that have been going on around here, recent happenings. I had a mother cat take up residence in the woodshed behind the house with kittens. She was hanging around for a long time, had no idea there were kittens until one day, boom, there's some kittens. So we've got all these kittens in the backyard. Or I should say had, because this happened already, it's already happened, it's taken place. This is the past I'm talking about. By the way, that's a cat running around right now, playing with a toy. You might hear that in the background. So, we had these kittens and the mother cat living in a woodshed behind our house, and I built a little barrier, a little wall, because I got this neighbor with his dog. I'm not a dog person. You're gonna find that out probably over time listening to the podcast, listening to me ramble. I'm sure this won't be the first time I mention this. I'm not really a dog person. I don't really care for dogs. Always gravitated towards cats. I guess I relate to cats a lot more than I relate to dogs. You know, actually, to be honest, I really don't understand why. They're big and loud. I tend to be pretty loud, fairly big. Not height-wise, but not length-wise either. I don't know. I would consider myself to be a loud person when I need to be. But I prefer cats. I don't know, it's always been cats. So we got these kittens in the backyard, and the neighbor's got this dog barking. All kinds of barking. Day and night this dog barks. I don't think they take very good care of it. I would like to call somebody on it, but I don't really know what to do about that. The dog, when they let it out into the backyard, it does nothing but bark. And it's not like it's barking at anything in particular, it's barking at the house. Always just looking at the house, my house, and barking at it. It's like it hates the existence of the house and everything within it sometimes. It feels a little bit like that. I'm sure the dog doesn't have those feelings. I don't know if the dog can even, feel those feelings, but it's very hateful when it barks. So it's barking, and so I tried to put lattice up on the fence, and the neighbor came out and knocked it down in front of me. I put up a little wall, maybe 3 feet from the fence where she can't actually reach it. I propped up some lattice with some wood. It's a whole thing. Eventually, we did catch them sort of like peering over and around our fence, looking into our backyard to where the kittens would be. And like doing a lot of obviously shady things, trying to scare the cats. They had a leaf blower and they were blowing it underneath the fence at the cats one time. So what I did was take an old webcam that I had and mount it to some of the framework to where the lattice was standing before, and aimed it at their backyard. And if that wasn't enough, I took a little red Solo cup and I sort of put it over top with a little hole through it, and it would light up and look like a red dome security camera. It looked pretty real from afar. And, I mean, if you want to have some fun, if you've got crappy neighbors, do this too. It's a lot of fun. You get to watch them realize it's a camera, and then, like, try and look in your backyard without being caught by the camera. I saw a lot of ducking and running behind taller fences. It's a great time. And then, if that wasn't enough, I took I took a tripod with a flashlight on it, and I just turned the flashlight on, taped it to the tripod, and just stuck it up in the window so that it looked like it was an actual camera looking down into their yard, so that they would just stop and knock it off. Personally, I've not done anything but yell at... I'll admit I yelled at their dog quite a few times. But like I said before, hateful barking this dog does. So it wasn't long after all of this went down that we noticed that one of the kittens was missing. We were only seeing 2 of the 3 kittens, and we kind of presumed it to be dead. And we were looking around for the body. I put a trail cam under the porch where we saw what looked to be a dead kitten under the deck. So I dug a grave, and the plan was to just scoop it up, dump it in the hole with all the leaves and everything that was sort of on top of it, just so we didn't have to see the dead kitten. So we scoop the little body out and we plop it into the grave, only to find that it was just 2 chipmunks. 2 chipmunks that I'm guessing the mother cat had killed and left under the porch. The kitten still at large. Not a couple days later, it winds up on our front porch, meowing, starved, obviously dehydrated. So we take it in. We tried taking it back to the mother. We did try. The mother cat wanted nothing to do with her, unfortunately, so I have some very sad trail cam footage that proves it. And so we took her in. My mom adopted her. Her name's Dolly, and she's healthy. She's healthy and getting neutered sometime soon, I think. So I guess what I kind of find funny out of the whole situation is that after we brought the cat in, to get it used to going into the litter box, I just grabbed some of the dirt that I would have used to cover her grave up. Just the tiniest little grave, the most adorable little grave. Adorable for all the wrong reasons. And I put some of the dirt in the litter box. So now she's lived long enough to piss and shit on her own grave. Take that one, Death. But I guess my whole point of the story is we're all neighbors, and I think we need to be more neighborly. What I'm trying to say is we here on planet Earth, us human beings, we need to maybe start treating each other with a little bit more respect, be a little more friendly to people you don't know. And it's such a weird gray area I'm seeing in a lot of these like public freakout videos, because that's what I go to YouTube to watch these days, are videos of people freaking out in public, and it's become a lot of white people hassling black people under the guise of sort of protecting their property, or like accusing this person of breaking some law that they actually don't really have an understanding of in the first place. It's just, times are starting to get a little scary, and I think we all need to realize that, hey, we're all in this together. We're all riding the same rock through space. Maybe we should try and make it the nicest rock we can while we're traveling through space before that rock collides with a bigger rock or is engulfed by the big fiery rock in the middle. We're all neighbors, and we all gotta be a little more kind to each other and hope to God that other people follow suit. So, be kind to your neighbor, train your dog, pick up your trash. I want to thank you all for checking out the podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. And thank you for sticking around this far. If you haven't yet, check out the Instagram, instagram.com/darkroastcult. We're on Facebook and Twitter too with the same username. We are slowly working towards the release of our first coffee. We are putting together a coffee brand, but there'll be more on that to come in the next episodes to tell you a little bit more about that and what you can expect from it. If you haven't emailed us yet, send us an email, and good night, everybody.